Welcome back to the Sport Management Speaker Series. My name is Dr. Casey Roszinski, aka Dr. R. We are sharing stories, highlighting helpful hints, and leaving leadership lessons from professionals in the sport and athletic industry. Our guest today is Ed Palumbo. Ed is Director of Hockey at Elite Prospects and also a Temple alum. Let's go, Owls.
How's it going, Casey? Dr. R, I should say.
Oh, no worries, no worries. So before we start, let's just dive into what is Elite Prospects for people that don't know.
Yep. So I work for Elite Prospects, which is the #1 ice hockey database website in the world, as far as hockey player rosters, team rosters, player stats, even just general player information. We're not just talking about professional hockey players. We're talking college, junior, and youth. I think our website added youth hockey players about, I want to say, 8 to 10 years ago, before I joined the company. But the site's been around since 1999. It was started by a guy over in Sweden named Johan Nielsen, who was really interested in just tracking rosters and stats of the Swedish junior programs over there, because they didn't have anything like that back in '99. So he started the site, and it grew to Swedish pro teams, Finland, all over Scandinavia, all over Europe, and then eventually the NHL, AHL, and all sorts of minor leagues, college. And it's now the #1 ice hockey website in the world, as far as if you Google a hockey player and they're not in the NHL yet, or at all, most likely our site's one of the top 2 or 3 results on Google. So, or most search engines, actually. So it's a pretty big deal in the hockey world. It's probably, the 2 words Elite Prospects are, 2 very individually sound words as far as the sports industry in general. But they've made a name for themselves in hockey, and I've been with the company for almost 3 years now. So and right now the company, Johan sold the company. He's still involved with Elite Prospects on the development side and the API side, like our back end database. But he sold the company a few years back, and it's owned by a Swedish media group called Every Sport Group. They have their hands in quite a few things, mostly sports media over in Europe, and especially Sweden. A couple of different sports facilities, teams, and just general data, sports data. So pretty big company, and Elite Prospects is a huge part of that company as well. So publicly traded on the Swedish market. So that means I don't get to make some decisions without people looking over my shoulder and telling me yes or no, that kind of thing, because we are a publicly traded company on the Swedish stock exchange. So that's Elite Prospects.
Interesting. So as I mentioned earlier, the audience doesn't know, we met from our undergrad days at Temple, and I knew you back then from always being in hockey. Hockey was like your passion, and for a lot of students out there, they may have a passion, whether they played college sports, high school sports, or they're just a fan of the game. So how'd you really get into the professional side of things? How'd you leverage your passion, even if you want to go back to when you were a student, right? Or, even after you graduate, what that process looked like for you?
Yeah. So I always knew from a young age that I wanted to work in hockey, or in sports in general, but I always had a goal of working in hockey, right? So, I think when I started playing around the age of 8 or 9 years old, I realized really quickly that the path to the NHL as a player is not realistic for a kid from central New Jersey and eventually Hershey, Pennsylvania area. So weren't a lot of scouts at our games, for sure. So so I told myself I always wanted to work in the industry, and it was a weird path. At first, I wanted to be a sports writer. Joined my high school newspaper as a freshman in high school, became the sports editor and a columnist by my junior year. And my high school wasn't big into hockey. I probably wrote one hockey one hockey article on our high school hockey team every year, and every other than that, it was all football, baseball, tennis, and all our other sports. So soccer. So yeah, it springboarded me into an opportunity where my senior year I was able to do a senior internship with our athletic director, and it made me realize that even if I don't work as a journalist or anything like that, plus it was a dying industry back then and still sort of is with blogs and everything out there. I think I just realized that I can expand my knowledge of the sports industry by just going to school for sports management. So that's what I did. Went to, we met at Temple University, sport and recreation management. And I had a few different jobs, few different part-time positions. I think I did an internship almost every year I was at Temple. And I even probably thought of myself as a Penn student, or tried to pretend I was a Penn student, because I did an internship over there. I worked at their ice rink all 4 years of college. So I had Penn, probably just as much Penn athletic wear and swag as I did Temple stuff. So not smart enough to go to Penn, but I sure did pretend I was. So, but yeah, and then the opportunities with hockey sort of came right after college. My first job was in the facility operations. It was what I did my internship at Penn for. My work at the Penn ice rink was also related to just running the facility. And I realized that, if there was one thing I wanted to do, is I wanted to be at every, all sorts of different sports events and just be one of those people behind the scenes. I was never someone that wanted to stand out and steal the show. I just wanted to be a supporting cast member kind of thing. And working in facility operations gave me that opportunity. In my first job out of college, I worked as I forgot my title, operations manager at the sporting club at the Bellevue in Center City, Philadelphia. And really nice fitness facility. I think at the time it was the third or fourth largest hotel associated fitness center in America. Really nice place, and it was more than just fitness. They had boxing, they had squash, they had all sorts of pools and everything. So it was a very large, more than just a gym. It was a legit sports center, basketball court, that kind of stuff. So it was really fun to work there. I did that for almost 2 years, and then actually got laid off. They didn't really have a whole lot of money at a certain point, because memberships were down, and they laid me off, and I was one of the younger operations managers, which I thought was dumb, because I was one of the only male operations managers left. So I don't know how they were going to go into the male locker room to check out certain things if things were broken, but I'm sure they had enough staff to do that. But it got me thinking, I really wanted to work back in hockey. So I found Sports Management Worldwide, an online course for hockey. It was called Hockey GM and Scouting, and it was taught by the former director of player personnel for the Peterborough Petes, a very high-end junior team in Ontario, Canada. And he's now I think the president and the GM of the team. So even he moved up. So he was the teacher. A former Boston Bruins general manager, Harry Sinden, was one of the instructors as well. And we had guest speakers for 8 to 10 weeks. So I just learned about scouting, learned about management in hockey, and I had my first opportunity to scout shortly after that at some lower level junior programs. And for those who aren't big hockey fans, junior is basically, it's above high school, because high school hockey, unless you're in Minnesota or Massachusetts or Michigan, high school hockey doesn't really matter. It's really where you play at the higher end youth levels. And then junior is what you usually go to prepare yourself for college. So junior hockey is usually for anyone between the ages of 16 to 21. And most U.S. players at least won't play junior until 18. Or in some cases 19, and then they might continue to play till 21 and not even start college till they're 21 or 22. So you get a lot of 25-year-olds playing as juniors or seniors in college hockey because of it. So but they probably finished their degree probably when they were 23 or so. So that's the long-winded story of how I got back into hockey. I scouted for the junior teams, the lower level junior teams, and just networked and moved my way up, and eventually got a few more jobs before landing a position at Elite Prospects. But talk more on that later. I'll let
Yeah.
I'll
So
let Casey take,
yeah.
maybe ask me
So
another question. I think I went into that too deep. So
I got two
yeah,
things from this. No, that was good. Like it was like a good overview. And so I got two things from what you were saying. It was the network. The network's huge. It's who you're meeting, who's helping you along the way, as far
yeah,
as mentors or whoever, and then also skill sets, because it sounds like you worked in operations, you understood the facility side of things, which, and we'll talk about this eventually, like that transitions to special events, so there's like different components. Even though if you may not work in one area, it's good to have like that understanding of that area, right?
yeah.
So um, I want to dive into our topic for this week. In our course, we're talking about sports agents, collective bargaining agreements, labor unions, so on and so forth. And I know with scouting, it's, I guess you could say, a pipeline to sports agency. But what does that look like in the hockey world? And especially since this is not necessarily just college age, right? This is a different age group. But maybe
Yeah.
do you want to explain more about your interaction with like sports agents?
So when I was scouting, like I said, I scouted for some lower level junior teams, but the kind of junior teams that most of those players are looking to just play club hockey in college, or maybe even if they can make it to D3, NCAA D3. So I didn't deal too much with agents in that role. However, they're always at the rinks, and that's one of the things that the hockey industry, there's a stigma against agents and what we call in the US player advisors, because they can be, they'll look at 13, 14-year-old players who are really good, and they'll say, hey, I can represent you, I can help your family out, and get you to the next level, kind of thing. And then you have that same family advisor saying the same thing to about 10 other kids at the same showcase. And then maybe 5 of those kids will sign up, pay a few $1,000s. The parents pay a few $1,000s to them. And then, um, the agencies probably gets too busy, or that advisor group probably gets too busy, and they take on too many clients, and then they end up not really doing anything except costing you money and responding to the occasional email. So there's a little bit of a stigma against it in the US. In Canada, they are allowed to be called agents in certain regions of Canada, or provinces, I think. They are allowed to be called agents even for the 14, 15-year-olds, because there's a higher chance that 14, 15-year-olds who are drafted to some of the junior leagues there will actually play at 16, 17, or 18 years old. Where in the US, everybody wants their kid to finish high school and then play junior hockey. So there's a few reasons why there's a little bit of a difference there. But agents, advisors, whatever you want to call them, they're all over the place in hockey. And some people can't be trusted. In fact, myself, in the different roles I've had in hockey over the years, if you had to ask me, if you had a player, or if you had a kid and they were looking for an opportunity, maybe they were 18, 17, 18 years old in their final year of AAA hockey, which is the highest level of youth hockey in the US and Canada. And they were looking for an opportunity to play juniors, but they've never spoken to a scout. I would probably only recommend 4 or 5 different people out of all the advisors out there that I would put them in touch with, just because it can be a shady business, and agencies, in hockey at least, sometimes aren't looking out for the kids themselves. So I think that's one thing, especially if the topic of the week is agents and contracts and stuff like that. You got to have a good lawyer if you're a parent, and make sure that if you're getting set up if you have a teenage kid that's getting set up with an advisor or agent, have a lawyer look at that contract and make sure there's nothing shady in it. Do your own due diligence, because at the end of the day, the only thing, you can whine and complain about what your agent did or didn't do for you, but at the end of the day, it is up to you to make sure you're reading the contract, and you have an actual leg to stand on if something goes wrong. So yeah. Yeah,
And
that's and then.
I'd
Mhm.
imagine that looks different too. Obviously, like college age. If they played in college after
Yep.
juniors, and then they're actually looking to sign with a legit agent or an agency. And then
Yep.
also, I'm not sure if you're overly familiar. Does hockey have a lot of clauses built in for like performance bonuses,
There are some.
incentives? Mhm.
Yeah, there are some. The NHL, the ones that you hear about publicly at least are mostly related to um, games played in a season, especially for the older guys who need
Mhm.
to sort of make that little bit of extra money based on whether or not they play a certain number of games. A lot of it's based on if the team makes it to the second round of the playoffs, the conference finals, the wins the Stanley Cup, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. Um, you don't hear too much about the performance bonuses and what they actually are. You in some cases you'll hear about them right when a player is about to hit a bonus.
Right.
Something like played 70. If this guy plays in the next two games, then he's played 80% of the games in the season, and then that means that the team's salary cap gets a little bit of a performance bonus overage or something like that the following season or something like that. So it's weird. And hockey's salary cap structure is still new to the sport. I mean,
Mhm.
the lockout in 2004 ended up producing the salary cap structure, and that's where you start to see some of the contracts that players have nowadays are tailored in a certain way by the GMs and the organizations to make sure that they can fit the player's contract in while also fitting it into the salary cap and making sure that they set themselves up for more than just one season, right? You got to plan ahead quite a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And then also, a lot of people may not think about this, but it takes a couple of people in a room to get contracts done, right? You don't just
Yep.
have the agent and the player; you have the general manager. In some cases, maybe the owner might be there.
Yep.
A lot of
Maybe a
different.
coach, but not normally. The
Mhm.
team probably has a few accountants and lawyers that they want in that room. Some teams probably even have a salary capologist or something like that, or a salary cap specialist that they're looking at, or that they have, who might be in the room or in an office nearby to look up some things if things change in the dollars and cents. So yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Interesting. So your title is director of hockey sales and live
Team
events. So
sales and live
it's
events, yeah.
yeah.
So
So
it's mhm.
all encompassing, and because we talk about like skill sets and like how important that is in the sports industry, and not just saying like I work in hockey, but and it's like, okay, well, what do you do? What do you bring to the
Mhm.
table as far as your skills? So obviously you started more on the operations side, and then you had that experience, and that parlayed into helping you with live events. And
Mhm.
did you know that was something you would be getting into as part of your role, or was that
I I was always interested in event planning.
mhm,
It's something that I really enjoyed in college, like seeing the finished product as you're working with a team to plan an event, and then all of a sudden it's here, and you're super stressed out on the day because you don't know if everything's going to go right, and there's always something unexpected. No matter
mhm,
how well you plan something, especially when it comes to events, there's always something unexpected that comes up
mhm,
that just throws you for a loop and
yep.
makes you sweat a lot more than you thought you would. So it's pretty crazy, and I always enjoyed it in college. Right out of college, I didn't do too much of it at the few jobs I had, but then a few years ago at the job I had prior to Elite Prospects, it was a hockey video analysis company. And during the pandemic, one of the big junior leagues in Ontario actually shut down their entire season, and they were one of the only junior league in Canada, and I think even in North America, that just didn't have a season at all. So all those players were kicked off. They knew that they were some of them were playing their last year of junior eligibility and wanted to make sure they put a good foot forward for university in Canada, or they can't play NCAA in US if they play junior in Canada. But yeah, they ended up have a few players ended up putting together an event, a 2 week showcase in Erie, Pennsylvania, for a bunch of the 16 to 19-year-old players who didn't get a chance to play, and it sort of pulled at those strings again, where I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm not coordinating this event, but seeing how they did it, seeing how well they put it together, looking for sponsors, looking for people who are helping, just willing to help out as volunteers, coordinating with the media. I mean, I think it was a 20-year-old kid who organized the event, as the main guy, and he was able to get
Oh,
scouts from
wow.
every NHL team to come, and players from all over Ontario and the U.S. The U.S. based
Impressive.
players who are playing in the Ontario Hockey League. They came to the event, and they played a full season, not a full season, but they played a very, very um, compressed 2 week schedule where they just were able to show off and you know play in front of scouts for 2 full weeks, NHL scouts for 2 full weeks. So it was good. And then I got this job with Elite Prospects, because the previous company I was at, Elite Prospects, was actually one of our clients, and I managed the account, and they asked me to take over, and they were interested in mostly a sales role, selling premium subscriptions to teams and large organizations and leagues, and they know that I did a good job in that, in my previous role with that video analysis company. So I took the job, and then all of a sudden, a few weeks into the job, they said, "Hey, we're going to get into running our own events because we think our brand name in hockey is big, and if we run an event with our brand name attached to it, people will come." It was sort of a "if you build it, they will come" kind of situation, and they asked me if I wanted to run the show a little bit with that, and I said sure. I hadn't had a whole lot of experience with it, but we formed a league that worked for 1 year. There were 10 member organizations with they sent their 14 and under, 15 only, 16 and under, and 18 and under teams, and all 10 organizations sent all four teams. Well, most of those 10
Mhm.
organizations sent all four of those age levels to our 4 weekend events, 3 regular season with standings and stats and everything, and then a playoff weekend in Tampa, Florida, 2 years ago. And it was really fun, really stressful, but we got some pretty decent sponsors to come in. We had a streaming company doing play by play for almost every game. It was a whole lot of fun. And then we have our annual showcase, which is still going on every year in April. And that event is a showcase for players who are looking to get drafted to the USHL, which is the big tier one junior league in the US. And then they also are eligible, whoever's eligible to play in the OHL, the Quebec Major Junior League, or the Western Hockey League in Western Canada. We invite those players and give them a platform to showcase themselves prior to their junior draft. So 15-year-olds. So that format might be changing next year. We sort of want to go in a different direction with that annual event. But it's been fun. The events themselves, we've attracted some decent scouts, decent coaches, former NHLers. I get to talk to some cool former NHLers who I don't
Mhm.
know how other athletes are, but I think hockey players are known to be pretty humble, and most of them are. It's not really a case of don't meet your heroes kind of thing. They are
Mhm.
actually pretty humble, and yeah, it's fun. It's a whole lot of fun. And I think the big thing for me is I don't coordinate a lot with the parents, but when we're at these events, I make sure that I introduce myself to as many people as possible, because a lot of the parents are getting emails from me, and sometimes I even walk up to people at the event and say, "Hey, I'm Ed Palumbo. I'm probably the one sending all the annoying emails. So if you're getting them and people are like, oh yeah, we've been getting them. Great communication. Thanks for letting us know everything. It was really helpful. That kind of thing. So that's rewarding for me, to make sure that I'm getting some feedback on the job that I'm doing,
Mhm.
and any criticism I'm happy to take as well. And luckily, not too much criticism has come my way. So it's good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Feedback's always important, And then speaking of feedback, the one thing that we've talked about in the sports industry as it's evolving is like technology, right? Data analytics, and I'm
Mm,
sure it's part of your world. Like
yeah.
you do a lot of that, and then maybe years ago it didn't look the same, but now as it's evolved, you had some experience in video analysis, things like this, and
Yep. Yep.
um, maybe you do want to talk about some of the opportunities, and then even the crossover with data for sports agents,
Yeah.
scouting, all the like
Yeah.
how these things are all intertwined.
So, real quick on my previous job, the video analysis company, I was in a sales role. I learned how to use the platform, and unfortunately, the pandemic helped because a lot of people realize, well, if scouts from college teams who already don't have very high budgets at the NCAA D1 level, even if they can't travel for work, then they need to watch video and try and scout as many players on virtually as much as possible. So that helped with the sales part of it. So that was very fortunate for me during the pandemic that I still had a job, and actually, unfortunately, the pandemic helped with my job because everybody needed video on hockey players. So, but that platform also provided a whole lot of advanced analytics and data that I still, some of it, don't understand today. I was just very good at selling it because someone who knows that stuff just needs to look at the platform and say, okay, this is something that we've been looking for. I just not need to pitch myself as a good account manager, that kind of thing, and they'll sign up. So but elite prospects, our site, we only cover the very basic stats, so games played, goals, assists, points, plus minus, penalty minutes, time on ice, that kind of thing. So the very basic stats for hockey, and we don't even have all of those, like time on ice and plus minus. Those are stats that not every league supplies to our website, so we don't have that for every league. But I do work with agents. I do work with NHL teams because they buy our back end data and our AP through our API. And our API includes pretty much everything on the website. So if you see something on the website, it's in the API. But if I'm an NHL team and I have my own hockey data analysts, I should say, and we need to pull loads of data all at one time, then I'm buying the Elite Prospects API so that we can actually just make an automatic data pull at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and then all of our internal processes
Makes
are
sense.
updated. So it's all very, very interesting stuff that I still don't fully understand. I mean, I looked at our Swagger Hub and our API documentation, and I say, okay, I know what these stats are. I know what this looks like on the website, but I would not know how to pull that stuff and copy and paste HTML code and all sorts of
Mhm.
stuff
Mhm.
into another process to build out an analytics function of any sort. So I don't even know if the words I'm saying make sense to someone who actually knows this stuff, but hopefully they do.
No,
But
no,
yeah,
no,
so
no
yeah,
sabermetrics or anything like
yeah,
that.
all those different metrics, like yeah, I know what some of it means, but I would not know how to actually use it and apply it
But
myself. So
they're
um,
important is
they
the
are
gist of it,
important.
right? And there's like,
Absolutely.
and it's practical, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And the agencies, I will say some of the more interesting stuff that we've seen, there are a few larger agencies who can afford our API that pay for it because they have clients all over the world in different leagues at different levels too. So they use our API for that kind of data so that they can actually work out whether or not a player is deserving of a certain contract. There's two instances in particular that not instances, but two situations where an agent would use our API, and it would mostly be historical data. We have a ton of stats going all the way back to the 90s, the 80s in certain leagues. And if I'm an NHL agent or even an agent for players who play in Europe or professional leagues anywhere else, and I need to either renew or get my player a better contract, I can use our API, the Elite Prospects API, to look at historical data and say, okay, my client is comparable to these guys, and this is how much these guys got paid during their age 22, 24, 26 years of playing, and they played in this same league, so they should make at least this amount, that kind of thing. So that's very interesting to me. I never thought of it that way, and it's very common sense stuff, but you don't think of it unless someone actually brings it up. So
and
um,
those are things
yeah,
that agents could use for leverage too, right?
exactly. Like data is all about leverage. If you have data, even if you're a marketing specialist for a Fortune 500 company, data allows you to compare yourself and see where you or your company is, in relation to others. Data is sort of a competitive advantage kind of thing. So, and then the other situation that actually came across about, I think, a year and a half ago, a they're not an agent, but an attorney actually reached out to us and said they wanted to pay for a full year of access of our API because their client um, played in a league over in Europe, suffered a career-ending injury, and the league was not willing to, or the league, I forget if it was the league, his league, or the team he played for was not willing to compensate him correctly for medical bills and all sorts of expenses. So this is something that could help with
Interesting.
the agency world. They wanted to use our API to project how much money he could have made if he had a full career. Um,
Interesting.
so I don't know if they won the case. Obviously, they didn't share that information with us, but
Yeah.
that was the pitch they sent to us. They said, "Hey, we need to use your API so that we can gather historical data and figure out how much our client should win in a lawsuit against the league or against the team or something like that." And we said, "Okay, well, you can pay for an annual for an annual license of our API." And,
Real quick,
so yeah.
what does API mean, or was it just the
Why you gotta
basic
embarrass me? Don't ask
definition?
me that. I that is actually embarrassing. I sell the damn thing and I don't know what API stands for, but it is the back end data of our website. So every when it comes to statistics and data, API is basically the back end data. So most
Mhm.
websites, or at least bigger websites, have an API. Their
Mhm.
product developer or the web developer builds an API, and it's basically the historical code of not historical, but the back end code of the website. And APIs allow you to pull data from you know certain sites. So um,
Makes sense.
yeah, yeah. Not the best explanation, but I don't have to sell the explanation. I just have to sell the API.
Mhm. No, it makes sense. So, what would you say to any current students or prospective students, for example, in sport management industry, or anyone who's interested in just gaining more experience in the sports realm or the athletics environment? What would you say as far as just feedback for
Yeah.
them and how they could navigate their early career?
So feedback and advice for young people who want to work in the sports industry. A lot of this is going to sound cliche, but the whole showing up to work kind of thing, it matters. And one thing, like for instance, when I was a scout, I knew that in order for me to find players and network and be someone that people knew as a scout, I had to constantly be at the rink. There are success stories of people who've actually been hired as scouts because they were just there all the time. And teams. There's one story, for instance. Tiana Scott, I believe her name is. She's a female scout for the Erie Otters of the Ontario Hockey League. She was hired by their GM and assistant GM because it seemed like every single hockey showcase or event they went to, they saw her there and she was writing little notes in a notebook, and they were like, "Well, let's see what she's doing. Let's see why she's always at these events." And she said she's just a big hockey fan and she was taking notes on players. And they said, "Well, do you want to scout for us, because we see you're in the rink all the time? We might as well hire you." So that's probably not the full story, and I think she may have been a former professional hockey player too.
Hmm. Hmm.
Actually, I don't know. I don't know. I might be confusing two different situations, two different stories there, but it's that's the point, right? Is be there. If you're not someone that's being recognized, if whether you're scouting or whether you want to work in facility operations or work in whatever it is, if you want to be an agent, just go to rinks and talk to people, because agents are they're not always going to announce themselves, but agents or family advisors or people in that kind of role, they're going to be at the rinks. You're not going to know who they are unless they're Scott Boras with Major League Baseball, or those guys that they're
Hmm.
not going to always announce themselves. They side up, they just like any scout. They sort of like to sit by themselves in a corner and do their job.
Hmm.
And then if they need to talk to someone, they'll go up and talk to someone. But If you're not someone who's willing to just be there and show up and constantly be around that atmosphere, then you might not have as much success or might not get the right opportunity as someone who is. Right. So you can have the greatest resume in the world. You can go to school for all these different things. You can get a master's degree and all sorts of stuff. Um, but if you don't have the hands-on experience, it's not going to help you like with most things, to be honest. Um, School can only take you so far. So
Yeah,
that's
well, that
one
makes
big piece of
sense.
advice. The other one I'd say is just be a decent friggin' human being. Like the sports industry, like in social media these days, we hear all about the good and the bad, and a lot of it's bad. And if you're stuck on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, or Instagram, like you're seeing a lot of different bad things happening in the sports industry, and that's not just not just football, basketball, hockey. It's every sport. And if you're working in youth sports, you mostly hear bad stuff if you're not involved in youth sports because you're just looking at social media. So sort of forget where I was going with this, but yeah,
Value
just
system, be a good
yeah,
person.
just being a good person. Like, yeah, it'll take you a lot further than being a slimy person who's just looking to get ahead and will make, backdoor deals for a job offer or job opportunity or anything like that. There's too many people like that in this world, and they eventually get found out, as you see. So be a decent human being. Say thank you to everybody. Be polite. I think the last event that I worked at Michigan State for our company, uh, one of the things that we always send out this survey, right, at the end of
Mhm.
the event to all the players and parents, and ask for their feedback on how the event went. Different things like, what did you think of the vendors? What did you think of the fitness testing? What did you think of the location, the city? You got a 15-year-old kid attending a showcase at Michigan State University, like in April when a lot of the kids are drunk and partying. Like, like was that okay for you? And that kind of thing. And one survey response I saw was, people were thanking myself and my staff, or one person thanked myself and my staff for walking around to all the parents of these 80 kids and saying, hey, thank you for coming, thank you for devoting the time and bringing your kid to this. Good luck with everything, and we have to hightail it out of here because we got a flight, or a bunch of us have a flight to our different homes in 2 hours after the last game, so we won't be able to have that kind of like closing ceremony kind of thing. So, but we just wanted to say thank you. And the parent said in their survey response, they've never had an event organizer personally thank every parent at the event. Like, some events are bigger than 80 kids and 80 players, but for them that meant a lot. And I never thought that was something that didn't happen. I thought event organizers were always present and were always like front facing and trying to make sure that they were known, because I just think it's a relationship business, whether it's hockey or any other sport. Like, it's networking, and it's putting your best foot forward. And at the end of the day, if you want to leave a legacy of you or yourself, and pass on decent qualities to your own children and other people that you lead as a manager or a director of a team, that kind of thing. Like, don't you want to be a decent person and pass on those kind of qualities that are lasting
Mhm.
impressions on people? So um yeah, I was just very surprised that no one's ever done that for the parents before and just said thank you. Like, it's a very simple thing to do. So it takes a
100%.
while to walk around and find all these parents, but
Yeah.
you try to hit as many as you can, and yeah, so
Yeah. Showing up
yeah,
differences in the details. And then also it's not who you know, it's who knows you, right? And that
yeah,
goes a long way.
yeah,
So um,
yeah.
I will put your contact information down below as we sign off. But I know you hit on a lot of things, but I'll give you the last word in case you want to speak on anything that we haven't talked about, topic areas, sport industry, whatever. So you have the last words.
Oh, I don't know. I oh, last word. What would I say if I had the last word? I
Leader,
guess
leadership,
it's
leadership. Speak on something. How about with
with
leadership
leader.
and how to
Um,
build leadership characteristics?
I think it's sort of related to my last answer. It's being a decent person, listening to your clients, listening to the people who whether they're staff members who work for you or with you. It's more than just speaking and leading. Leading is more than just making speeches and everything like that. And I know I probably spoke for about 90% of this entire 95% of this entire call, but that's listening is just as important as speaking, and understanding the people around you is very important in this world, really, not just this industry but this world. So listen as much as you speak, or more, to be honest. Very cliche again, like I
Great.
said.
Great. Thanks, Ed, for coming on, and thanks everyone for listening. Until the next one, see you on the next episode.